without such proof, how does Elections Canada verify that a prospective elector is providing their actual real last place of residence in Canada and voting in the appropriate riding?
Last time you were here, I asked you a question about the ballots in Port Coquitlam that went missing.
At some point in the process for other ballot boxes, they go home to a private residence to be secured, is my understanding. Does that ever happen with special ballot boxes? They never leave returning offices. No.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Pursuant to Standing Order 108 Sub 3, the committee is meeting on its study of challenges regarding special ballot voting.
The riding in which a Canadian living abroad votes in is determined on their last place of address in Canada. The Elections Canada application for registration to vote abroad requires a prospective elector to provide proof of Canadian citizenship. However, the application does not require that a prospective elector provide proof of their last place of residence in Canada. So, without such proof, how does Elections Canada verify that a prospective elector is providing their actual real last place of residence in Canada and voting in the appropriate riding?
So thank you, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Chair, the regime is designed in recognition of the fact that people living abroad and who have lived abroad perhaps for a long time often will not have documentary proof of residence. So their application serves as the means to determine where they will vote. The critical point is that once they have registered on the International Register at a particular location, they may not move that. They cannot change until they come back to Canada to reside. And so there is no opportunity to further, change electoral districts for perhaps political considerations.
So, and I take your point about once they are on the registrar, but what proof or verification is there before they get onto the registrar to vote in a specific riding?
As I indicated, there is no verification. There is an offense for making a false and misleading statement in the application. And if there is evidence that comes up that the statement made by the applicant was wrong, of course, then there may be consequences. But that regime is designed in recognition of the fact that there may be no such evidence to produce the verification.
Okay, so just so that I'm crystal clear, Elections Canada it takes the prospective elector at their word, subject to there being evidence that, in fact, they are voting in the wrong riding.
Correct, and that is the regime designed by Parliament for the reasons that I indicated.
Now, as you noted, once someone is registered, they remain registered, and as I understand it, what that means is that a special ballot kit will be sent to that address at the time that the writ is issued. Do I have that right?
Correct.
Okay. So what steps are taken to ensure that the special ballot kit actually makes its way into the hands of the prospective elector, given the fact that it could have been several years since they applied to be listed on the registrar at that particular address?
That's a very good question, Mr. Chair. So every 12 to 18 months, we issue a confirmation process. So we write to all people who are on the register to confirm their address. And if they do not reply, we take it then that they have moved and we remove them from the register. So it is regularly verified. So there will not be several years before that occurs. The other thing that is important to know, of course, is that if a kit is issued to a wrong address, for example, because a person no longer resides there, the person, there is a number of elements of information that need to be completed on the outer envelope, which are then matched with the information that we have in the register to make sure that only the right person actually is using the kit.
Okay. So two things. First, with regards to the verification that is sent out, you said about every 18 months.
12 to 18.
12 to 18 months. That's an email that is sent?
Correct.
And if you don't hear back, just to clarify what happens?
Then we would remove the elector from the register, and they can apply again to register.
And does that happen fairly often?
They have a month to reply, but yes, we do have people who are removed from the register.
Okay. And you then spoke about the special ballot kit. So once an elector fills out their ballot, puts it in the inner envelope, then puts that, has the outer envelope, sends that back to Elections Canada headquarters in Ottawa. You spoke of some verification measures. Can you just elaborate on what those exactly are?
Correct. These are the measures that are in fact prescribed in legislation. So we have to verify that there is a signature on the outer envelope. There's the name of the elector that is there. We do a barcode scan to make sure that the return envelope matches the kit that was issued. So, and that's, of course, is of critical importance. It ensures that a kit that may have been issued in a previous election will never be able to be used in a subsequent election if it was not used in that election, because the barcode ensures that there's a proper match.
Okay. Is the Lost Canadians bill that has now been passed and received really assent. So I kind of want to drive that conversations around Canadians that are born of Canadians abroad, may not necessarily have their Canadian citizenship yet, but will be provided one. And maybe if you can give us an idea of how that process is going to go when they become Canadian, if there are Canadians that become Canadians through Bill C-3, and do not live in Canada. Like, what is the plan or the requirements or any legal procedures that they may have to go through? Because the requirement to be able to add it on the register's vote is that you must have lived in Canada for a specific amount of time. So I'm curious to know. I see you're already shaking your head, so let's hear you. Let's hear you on this.
Following the Supreme Court decision in the case of Hang and Duong, the Parliament amended the legislation. And any person who has Canadian citizenship and who lives abroad may register. The Act provides that the place for which they vote, the place for which they register in Canada, is their last place of ordinary residence. However, the Act also states that every person is deemed to have a place of ordinary residence in Canada, that's Section 9, and that if we are unable to determine by the normal rules what is that place of ordinary residence, then the relevant election officer, in this case would be Madame Duquette and her team, would come to a determination of what that place is. And it could be where the family members in Canada or last were. It could be a place of work, even though they are abroad, they may have worked in Canada. It would be some place of connection. At the end of the day, we are required to find the most appropriate location for that elector. And as I indicated earlier, once that location is identified, the person stays with that location until and if they come to Canada to reside again, not just to visit, but to actually reside in Canada.
Who receives voting kits abroad? Now, my understanding is that once a person is registered and on the international electors list, whatever it's called, that person is there permanently, subject to every 18 months or so having a confirmation that they're still on. So the ballot kit then goes to all those people who are on that list and who've reaffirmed within the last 18 months. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, good. So thank you. So now when I'm looking at your report, this is just for understanding, on page 21, table 4, you note that electors living outside Canada voting by mail, 101,000 plus some. Let's call that 102,000. Yep. And of those, only 57,000 returned, so 56.5%, which is a very low percentage compared to the other forms of voting. So, so just to be clear, the 102,000 ballots issued were not ballots that were just recently requested, but they were sent out automatically to anybody who was on your voters list.
The vast majority of those, or the majority of those, were recently requested during the writ period. There were 48,000 electors on the register at the issue of the writ, 43,000, and those were sent a kit right at the writ drop. The remainder were people who registered during the writ period. And of course, depending on the time, they may have received the kit in a timely way, but in some cases after the election day. See, these sort of late registrations explain the fact that in non-fixed date elections, we have lower return rates.
Right. I'm just surprised by those numbers. 48,000 are on your electors list of
43, I was correct.
43,000, sorry. And how many Canadians live abroad? I understand it might be 3 million.
It's a good question. I've seen estimates between 2 and 4 million. So there's a bit of I've read different estimates.
Right. So that's like a very, very low percentage of people
It is.
are interested enough. Canadians living abroad are interested enough to actually get onto the voters list.
It is a very low percentage.
Yeah.
No matter whether it's 2 or 4 million, it remains low.
So do you see that as a problem, or is that just the natural way of things, that people who live abroad might not be very interested in what's going on in Canada?
That is my perspective, and those who are interested have the right to exercise the right to vote, but they're not compelled to, and I'm not entirely surprised by the fact that there are so few.
I wasn't going to ask this question. My colleague, Ms. Normandin, already asked about electronic voting. Do you think those numbers would improve if we had electronic voting?
And it raises an interesting question. It would make it easier. Whether they would want to vote is another matter. It also raises the question of would Parliament want to make the voting easier for Canadians abroad than for Canadians living in Canada?
Right, good point. Yeah, it's a very good point.
I know the answer.
Okay, so now I'm going to get to my what I was really going to ask, and that is the security of the ballots once they've been received and mailed back to Ottawa Centre. And, the last time you were here, I asked you a question about the ballots in Port Coquitlam that went missing.
Correct.
So, there's room for human error.
There is.
So what happens with ballots once they arrive at this central place in Ottawa? How secure is it? Is it camera monitored? Who's in charge?
So this is a good question for Mme. Duquette, and I'll let her speak to it rather than correct me.
Thank you. So I would say that, of course, the location is very secure. There's restricted access, of course, and the ballots or the outer envelopes are always under lock and key. And before we start the count, of course, there's a verification process that happens with the outer envelopes where we do some integrity checks. First of all, we check if the outer envelope has been signed by the elector. If there's a barcode on it, if the barcode is associated to the application that we got or the record that we have on file for the elector. The ED, is it the same ED? Can we match the ED with the ED for the purposes of voting? Once those checks are done, sorted by ED, and then they're sent to the count. But it's a very secure location, and you can't just, it's restricted access for people who deal with the outer envelopes.
Okay, fair enough. So do you check ID, or to what extent do you check ID to make sure that the person who is on your voters list is actually the person who is casting the ballot, filling it in, or doing a check mark or whatever they do?
Very quick answer, please.
At the application level.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Once it's verified at the application, there's a match with the barcode, then we know it's the same envelope and there's a signature and a name. If members would be interested in visiting the premises at Coventry, I would be very happy to host a visit. It's all under cage and chain.
We do love field trips, but we do have to get House approval, and that's something we can discuss at our next committee business. Thank you, Mr. Van Popta.
We're studying about the challenges that Canadians living abroad face in exercising their democratic right to vote, and we're looking at the operational and logistic barriers behind these. And I appreciate your advice and your practical solutions. We're talking about ballot delivery times, modernization in any way of special voting, and I appreciate your expertise. I believe you, Monsieur Perot, said roughly half of the people that sent in ballots were already on the list, and then when a writ drops, the writ is given, then the other half applied for? Is that correct, roughly?
It was less than half who were already on the register. The majority were not. And this is somewhat, I would say, exceptional. There typically are fewer people who register during the writ period. And so it explains perhaps the large number of either unreturned because they received it so late that they didn't dare return it, or late return. The fact that it was not a fixed date election, the fact that it was a high turnout election, so people were interested in participating, resulted presumably in that late demand for international ballots.
I mean, the biggest challenge is, like you said, not a fixed election date. So kudos to you and everyone who has to work with that. When people ask for a ballot, they're sent a ballot. Do you end up getting, so I know there's a website, but do you end up getting an increase in inquiries as to people saying, I'm trying to fill this out, can I have some help? Is there a bit of a tech support?
Absolutely. For my directorate, for example, we have what we call a service center, which is a support center where electors can contact us and they can ask us a variety of questions related to special ballot voting. It could be something about their particular kit, like I registered on such and such a date, I didn't get a kit yet, or, all kinds of information. But
I voted by special ballot for myself, which was a strange phenomenon. And I'm just wondering if you can tell me what protocols are in place to ensure the security of special ballots at Elections Canada offices in each constituency. Are they stored at each returning office in a camera-monitored storage area?
Yes, I can take that. So all returning officers who secure an office, who rent out an office for the purposes of the general election, need to have a security system, and all ballots must be under lock and key. So they have filing cabinets or things like that.
Sure. Does a security system include cameras or just an alarm system?
We can check on that, but it really depends on the type of setup because, as you probably know, all offices are not created equal. It's not Tim Hortons model, so it really depends on the landlord and what's available at the location.
And who would have access to the storage area? Just the returning officer, or would other officials at each returning office have access as well?
I would say that in terms of the ballots and the special ballots, it's probably what we call or what we refer to as this service point supervisor. This is a role that oversees what we call the service center, where you have service agents who facilitate voting by special ballot.
Okay.
Ultimately, he's responsible to oversee the planning and the deployment of all services that leverage special ballot.
And my final question is, at some point in the process for other ballot boxes, they go home to a private residence to be secured, is my understanding. Does that ever happen with special ballot boxes? They never leave returning offices?
No.
Unless they are national ballots, then they need to be shipped to headquarters ahead of day zero.
But those would never go to a private residence?
They would not.
Okay.
They would not.
Thank you. I would yield the rest of my time to Mr. Calkins.
Thank you very much. The last federal election, according to, I think it was $570 million. Do I have that about right? And if you factor that out over 37 days, that's $15.5 million a day. Now, granted, some days in the election are more expensive than others for Elections Canada to prosecute the election. Does it make sense from a fiscal capacity to extend the length of the election period to let a few hundred or maybe a few thousand more electors participate overseas? And what's the cost-benefit analysis on that, if you've done one?
You can easily provide the numbers because we've had longer election periods. We had one in 2015, for example, which was 79 days. The costs are largely identical. The difference could be in an additional month of rent, depending on the date, the timing for the RO offices. But there would be 1 week additional salary for the limited staff in the office of a returning officer, but it would not significantly impact.
What percentage of the staff are actually get paid for the entire duration of an election, and which, like compared to the number of staff that are brought on just for E-Day and for advanced polling days, et cetera?
I'll guess a number, and my friend here will correct me, but we're talking about for one-day workers or a few-day workers. Advanced polls and polling day, we're probably around 200,000, and for office staff around 30,000, but it's probably an overstatement on my part.
That gives me the ratios that I need. Out of the 43,000 people that are on the list at the start of the last election for the overseas, how do they show up on the voters list?
They show up on the international register.
So they don't show up but they're registered in an electoral district, are they not?
My friend will correct me. They do not show up on the list.
They do not show up on the list that is used during that election. They are on the permanent voters list, but they are not released on the list that we provide to returning officers, to candidates and political parties.
Why not?
Because they are registered to vote by special ballot, and they are not expected to vote at their polling location.
And that list is available through the portal to candidates and parties, so it's not a secret list somewhere. But the list that is used to administer the in-person voting does not include international.
Fair enough. Last question I have, Madam Duquette, you were talking about the things that you check when a ballot is returned, and I was talking specifically, it doesn't really matter where, but the integrity of the process is what matters to me. So we've got the barcode. You do the check at the time of the application, which is how you do we have no idea if the person that's actually filled in the ballot was the actual person. I understand that would be difficult to administer. But when that ballot is returned, is it checked also for integrity of the envelope?
Oh, absolutely, because we use a standard set of envelopes, and it's got particular markings on it. It has a specific color.
So if an envelope looks like it's been opened or tampered with, what do you do?
We set it aside.
Okay.
Twice I was a trainer for Elections Canada in my riding. I'm very familiar with municipal voting, and I was a trainer for Elections Ontario as well. So I really appreciate the challenge of having to gather the people, train them right, because the people being trained are in those offices as well. It's like assembling a corporation immediately as soon as the writ drops, and then seeing it through. So kudos to you and your team. I'm curious with respect to the international voting. Is there any riding, so you see the distribution of who's registering as well, is there any riding where there's potential for a material difference in the outcome if everybody voted, that you think it could potentially influence an election? So that's a question. Also, do you see any trends around which countries have the most registered electors outside of Canada? And then did the redécoupage have any kind of impact on the foreign voters this year?
We do look at the patterns. Mm-hmm. We do want to see after an election whether there are indicia of some anomaly, of unexpectedly high number of internationals showing up in one particular part of the country that does not seem plausible, and we haven't seen any kind of trend that's worrisome. Of course, they are sprinkled across the country. If the result is close enough, by definition, it can make a difference, and I guess that's the whole point of it, is to be able to make that difference. But we don't see any unexpected distribution.
And just to come back on the closeness sometimes, would it be helpful to count the votes that are postmarked for the appropriate date and time? And are there ever circumstances where flights are canceled or there's a massive storm and the ballots just can't get back in time? Are there considerations for that, given that every vote matters?
Yes, that's an important point. Now, the regime has been designed with that in mind, with a certain strictness, that it has to be in no matter what. And if you start doing exceptions for one, because it's a few hours, why not a few days? A storm, what about a flood? A strike. And so you have to be strict. We have to administer the rules as they are laid out. And we do see kits coming in, and of course there are some kits that are lost in the mail, come in later, or delayed for all kinds of reasons. But there has to be strictness. I am told that Canada Post, and it may be mistaken, but I was informed that Canada Post has stopped date marking the envelopes that they process. And so that this would not be a reliable marker. But in any event, I think it raises all kinds of policy questions that are legitimate. And we see countries that do allow votes to be counted if they come in after the election. But then you want to make sure that the system that they use for delivery marks the time the vote was cast. And there's a variety of means by which mail returns to us at the international and national level. Somebody can bring it in. Somebody can send it by by courier or by regular mail. So we'd have to look at all the circumstances to make sure that there is a clear marker for the date. I don't know that the Canada Post still does that.